And then once you've got a Bible, you can open, now in English, you can open up to Ephesians chapter 5. It's good to see all of you again. We haven't been in Ephesians for about a month now because of all the different things we've had going on Wednesday nights. I wasn't here last Wednesday. I heard that Pastor Cisco took good care of you, heard that it was a good night, and so I was thankful for him. He's a great guy, great friend, and yeah, we are back in Ephesians tonight in chapter 5, and we covered the first 7 verses like a long time ago. I was looking back at trying to figure out my notes. I think it was back at the end of May. So a whole month has passed, I think. And hey, just to bless all of you, okay, just to get you in the right frame of mind. Some of you are starting back to school in like 3 weeks. What a blessing, I know. And then the rest of you, like 4 weeks. Some of you, if you're homeschooled, man, blessed, right? Too blessed to be stressed. You start like in September probably or something like that. So that's the life right there, man. But if you're in public school, you know, you're starting like in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So enjoy, man, the last stretch here. We are looking at Ephesians chapter 5. And we've been in Ephesians. Because it's been so long, I know we've got some new people in here. Let me just real quickly tell you that the first 3 chapters of Ephesians, Paul was teaching. It's called doctrine, giving them doctrine. And then in the last half, the 4, 5, and 6, chapter 4, 5, and 6, it's all about duty. It's like I learned all this stuff. Now what am I supposed to do with it? And so Paul's been telling them, hey, this is what you're supposed to do with it. And so we're right smack dab in the middle of that, and I'll show you how it's broken down for the note takers. There are, in Ephesians chapter 5, 4 main divisions. You can see there, walk in love, walk in light, walk in wisdom, and then walk in order. And way back in the day when we were in Ephesians every week, I was going to cover walk in light and walk in wisdom in one fell swoop, as they say. Like I was going to cover it all in one study. And then the more time that I had to study, my walk in light study just kept getting longer and longer. So tonight we will be looking at just walk in light. Okay? So if you heard we were going further than that, it was a vicious rumor. It was a lie. Walk in light tonight, verses 8 through 14. Now, Paul is again right in the middle of telling the Ephesians, this is what you're supposed to be doing with all this knowledge that you have now. Okay, you've got all the study, you've got all the doctrine stuff. Now it's time to put it all into practice. And the first thing that he told us, at least in this chapter, was to walk in love. And those were some amazing verses, the first 7 verses. Walk in love, he told us, and that is so extremely important. You know, it is summertime right now, and, you know, we've got people, like new people showing up. We've got some of the freshmen that are like, hey, I'm done with junior high, man. I'm in the high school class now. And as new people start to come in, you start to see new faces, it's a great opportunity to exercise that love that we have for one another, right? Because there's no competition, right? It's not like, you know, junior high, you know, down with those guys. Like, we love them. And as they're coming in, we want to make sure that we're expressing that love to them. But new people maybe that are just like moving into town, you know, into the fee, they just came from wherever, and now they're like starting a new life, whatever, all the different things that happen. We got to be on the lookout for the new faces and then expressing that love to them and saying, hey, you know, we love you here. You're welcome to be here, but not just in this room, obviously at home, wherever we're at on your team. You know, you got, you know, cross-country practices already or whatever's going on. Great opportunities to express, to put that, we know about the love, we know what it looks like, and then to put that into practice. And we all know that love in the Bible, the greatest kind of love is agape love, and that's self-sacrificial love. So I'm with people. How can I sacrifice and bless somebody else, right? Instead of thinking like the world, like, how can I sacrifice them for my own comfort? How can I, you know, get something out of it? You know, forget all of that, man. We want to make sure that we are expressing that love. So Paul was talking about all of that, you know, unconditional, self-sacrificial love. Talked about avoiding sexual pitfalls, which was I mean, that was part of the Greco-Roman world, was sex was actually worshipped. And so it was a huge deal. So Paul was warning them against all of that. Now we come to verse 8 and begin to look at walk in the light. And Paul begins here in verse 8 by saying, "For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light." Now this is absolutely astounding. May not sound like much to you. Maybe you've heard it before. But if you pause, take a look at what he's saying, and we'll get to the second half in just a moment. But look how he starts out, verse 8. "For you were once darkness." Now, he had taken some time in the preceding verses when I told you he was warning against sexual pitfalls. He talked about fornication and uncleanness and covetousness. He talked in verse 4 about filthiness and foolish talking, coarse jesting, dirty jokes, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. And so now what he does is he says, you were once darkness. He tells us that you used to walk that way. Like that's what you were. Now, I want you to notice the wording here, "For you were once darkness." He doesn't say you were once in darkness, which we were in darkness, but he said you were actually darkness. So you were the one, you were perpetrated, you were or not perpetrated, you were the one that kept it going. You kept producing that darkness. That's a picture of our life before Jesus, before we gave our lives to Jesus. And it might be that you got saved when you were 2 years old, and you go, man, how sinful can a 2-year-old be? Like, I really didn't do anything that bad. Maybe you didn't go out and you didn't steal, or you probably did steal actually, but you probably didn't murder anybody, or rob a bank, or push an old lady down or something like that. But when you were a 2-year-old, you were all about self. From the moment that we come out of that womb kicking and screaming, why are we kicking and screaming? Because I don't want to be out here. I want to go back inside my mom's tummy, man. It was way warmer and nicer in there, and these lights are bright, and why are these doctors touching me with their cold hands or whatever? And then from the moment that we're born, it's all about self. And then we really struggle with that for the rest of our lives. But when you got saved, before you got saved, you were darkness, and Paul's pointing that out. For you were once darkness. But there's some great news there. It's past tense. Past tense. Do you see what he says? For you were once. Were once. Those are the two key words. You were once darkness, and then he uses the word but. In verse 8, though, at the beginning there, you were once darkness. So something radically changed. What in the world could possibly change me from darkness if I was darkness? If I was perpetuating, that's the word I was looking for earlier, if I was perpetuating that, if I was just producing darkness, what was it that changed? Now, I want you to see what Paul's doing here, especially for those of you that maybe haven't been around. Some of you that have been around for a while, this is going to sound real familiar to you, but for those of you maybe that haven't been, maybe that you haven't heard this much, or this is the first time you've heard it. But what Paul is talking about there in verse 8 is that our standing changed. Now, our standing before was that we were darkness. He goes on to say this, and this is the astounding part. But now, so past tense, but presently you are light in the world. Now, we'll get to the end of that in just a moment. But something changed in our standing. Here's what I mean. Look at your own life, examine your own life for a moment, and it doesn't take very long. You can look at your life and think about, your attitude this week, or, thoughts that you had. And I would be willing to bet that you didn't have a godly attitude 24/7. And you didn't have godly thoughts 24/7. Your shiny halo is probably a little tainted. And that's because we're still struggling with a sin nature, and God is working all that sin out of us. So we still see it there. And so when we read in verse 8, you are light in the world, Paul's telling the Ephesians, and by telling the Ephesians, telling us that you are light in the Lord. I'm looking at my life like, man, I don't think I'm light in the Lord. I don't get that. Like, sometimes there's light, but it feels like sometimes there's darkness, and I struggle. So what is Paul talking about here? Is Paul lying to him? What is it? Paul just crazy? What is he talking about? He's talking about positionally, like our standing. Yes, we still struggle with darkness. We still have dark thoughts or dark attitudes at times. But God is in the process of working that out. And God knows that about us. He knows what we're like. But positionally, God sees us as being light in the Lord, as being light in Him. This is incredible news. That positionally, God sees me. Positionally. Again, God knows I'm imperfect. He knows I struggle with sin. He knows that sometimes there's darkness that I produce or that I'm perpetuating. He knows that. But that's no longer the only thing that I'm doing. Now there's this fight going on where God is working the darkness out of me, that He already says, hey, you're not darkness anymore, so let's get that out of there. But now you're light, and let's get that light in there is what He's doing. And that's called sanctification. He's changing us, sanctifying us, setting us apart from the world. We're still in the world, but He's separating us from the world. So you were once darkness. Great news, past tense. That's no longer your nature. That's no longer, that's no longer weighing you down. You might fight with it. It might rear its ugly head lots of times, but that's no longer your identification. That used to be your identification. It no longer is. What is my identification now? You are light. What an incredible statement. Chris Amaro is light. Put your own name in there. Joe Perry is light. Easy is light. AJ is light. Trinity is light. And some of you that, you might live with Joe Perry. I don't know if his sister's in here or not, or, parents are in here. They might be like, Joe's light sometimes, but sometimes he's not, right? Somebody might look at Easy and like, oh, I hang out with that dude. He's light a lot of times, but like sometimes he's not, And you go like, well, what are you talking about? Well, again, positionally, when God sees me, He sees me as light. Now, don't get all excited and feel like, oh man, I just, I've got light in me like on my own. No, He says, but now you are light in the Lord. Now, we're going to look at this a little bit closer. But I need you to understand something, that the light, he declares us as being light. You are light. But it's not just light on my own. It's not just because I'm so lovable or I'm huggable or, I'm just such a great guy or, that's not what we're talking about. Whatever light we have comes from the Lord. We're light in the Lord. So if I'm not in the Lord, then I'm not light. So but because I am in the Lord, that's now my identification. See? School is starting pretty soon. Sports is going to start up. You're a baseball player, football player, basketball player, volleyball. What are you? I'm not any of those things. I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Christ. I might do those things. I might play football or play sports, or I might just be a great student. I'm into my grades and I don't really do athletics, but I'm all about education. That's great, but that's not your identity. You're not a student first. No, you're a follower of Christ first. And then I'm a Christian who, tries to do really good and get really good grades. Or I'm a Christian who plays football. Or I'm a Christian who plays baseball. Your identity is in Christ. And Paul is pointing that out here. Now, that's wonderful. Because that means that I don't have to search around and try to find my identity anymore. Isn't that great news? Like, I don't have to go like, oh, man, like, which crew am I going to be part of at school now? Okay, I see them over there, like, they wear all black, like maybe I should just, change my wardrobe and, get a bunch of black clothing and just be goth or emo or whatever, or like what's, or look at these guys over here, like these guys are, they do this, or, oh, there's the baseball crew. Normally the teams hang out together. So, softball team, they all sit at the same lunch tables or whatever, but I don't have to try to fit into anybody's group anymore. Why? Because my identity is in Christ. I'm not looking for my identity anymore. I've already got an identity. It's in Jesus. Which means I can go sit with the goths over there, or I can go sit with softball girls or the baseball guys or the basketball team, or I can sit with, whoever. I don't have to be stuck to one group and trying to identify with anybody. I'm light in the Lord. It's like it's lunchtime. Where's the light? Where's the other lights? Like, let me go find them. Let me hang out with them. But now you are light in the Lord. Now look what he does. He says, now that you know you're light in the Lord, walk as children of light. So there it is. This is what you are. Now live accordingly. Act accordingly. And I don't mean act like an actor, like just put on a show. I mean live accordingly. If you're light, then live like the light. And stop living like the dark. Now this is not original to Paul. Where did Paul get this from, that we are light? Did he just pull this out of his hat, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat? He's just going to pull this out and lay this on them? No, let me show you several verses here. I'm going to put these up here. Matthew chapter 5, verses 14, 15, and 16. Look what it says. This is Jesus speaking, by the way. He says, you are the light of the world. He just finished. This is at the beginning of what is called the Beatitudes, or the Sermon on the Mount. He's explaining to the people that are listening how to be part of the kingdom of God. Like, if you're part of the kingdom of God, this is what it looks like. And he just finished telling them that they were salt, the salt of the world, the salt of the earth. That's a good thing. It's a preserver. But we're focused on this. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light the lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and he gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. There it is. That's how Jesus put it. Let your light so shine. That light, you are the light. That's what Paul told us. Then let it shine, so that people can see your good works and not give you glory, but so that they can glorify the Father. That's what we want. Is we don't want people looking at us and then we just go, man, I'm so cool. Brush your shoulders off, right? No, I want to be like, hey, oh, you thought that was good? You thought I was good for doing that? Well, let me tell you about my God. I do that because Jesus said thus and so. Here's another one in John chapter 1. John wrote this, speaking of Jesus, and him was, in him, that's my typo, not anybody else's. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. So there it is again. So again, Paul didn't come up with this. This is something that Jesus had said, okay? This is something that John wrote about Jesus. John chapter 8, let me show you another one here. John chapter 8, verse 12. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. So now he's talking about himself. He says, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. I put that there to show you two things. Again, the light, Paul said that you are light. That doesn't just come from us. That's not just our glowing personality. That's not just, I'm just such a kind person. No. Whatever you are, whatever good you are, is because of Jesus. He's the source. I am the light of the world, he said about himself. But here's the second thing. He who follows me, that's us. Christian, that means we're a follower of Christ. Okay? He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. So I don't want to walk in darkness anymore. Done with all that. I want to follow Jesus. Wonderful. Now, we move on to verse 9. I haven't put any points up, but I'm going to, okay? Verse 9. Parenthesis here. For the fruit of the Spirit, some of your translations might say for the fruit of the light. Okay? Relax. Talking about the same thing here. Look what he says. Is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. Now, the way that goodness is used here, really means it's the word generosity. So being generous, being giving. I got to tell you guys, some of you have been around for a little while, and you know me. You know how crazy I get about Christmas. Love Christmas. Christmas is Christmas all year long, right? There's a good chance. People have made a good case that Jesus was actually born in December. That's okay. Some others have made a good case that I think he was born maybe in, the spring or the summer. Great. Let's just celebrate all year long. I've already started my Christmas shopping. I love it. I go out, I see, oh man, so-and-so would love this. And, they love this for Christmas. And look at the price too, like, woo. And I'm coming home, and then I'll send a text to like my family, my big family group chat, like with my sisters and my niece and nephew, and I'll be like, I did some Christmas shopping today. And they're just like, you're crazy. What is wrong with you? But I love to give gifts away, man. I love it. If I can, wrap it in paper. Okay, I'm telling, some of you know this already. You're like, I heard this 1,000 times. Okay, if you haven't, I always like to wrap gifts if I can. I don't like bags. Okay, wrap them, and I love to give, and then just like, all right, open it up. Like half of the fun is watching them rip the paper. I love that. And then they, oh man, oh okay, this is cool, whatever. I love to give things. I haven't always been that way. I haven't always been that way in my life. I used to like to take things from people, from other people's cars, from places that I worked at, from the cash register where I worked. I took a lot of stuff. Done with all that. I want to give. I want to be generous. So he says, in all goodness, which here again means generosity, righteousness means integrity in all dealings with God and people. Integrity in all dealings with God and people. That's what righteousness means here. And then truth, of course, is truth. You guys know what that means. It means without falsehood, no lying. So those are fruits that you and I, if we are the light and we're walking in light, then those are things that those are characteristics that should be evident in our lives. And maybe it's like, well, I'm pretty good at the truth part or the righteousness part, but the generosity, I'm kind of weak there. That's okay. The Lord knows that. And then you just go, Lord, I need help in this area. Maybe all three are hard. And you just go, Lord, I'm imperfect, man. I need help. And then submit yourself to him. Let him help you. Now, verse 10. For those of you that are note takers, here we go. If you like to take notes, the first thing that we need to do here, he tells us, is find out what is acceptable to the Lord. Now, we just read a little bit. We know that goodness and righteousness and truth are acceptable to the Lord. But notice in verse 10, finding out. That's a characteristic of somebody that is walking in light. That is light. It's the light of the world. And living in light, walking in light. What should I be doing? Well, you should be finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. What is acceptable to the Lord? Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay? If I'm supposed to find out what is acceptable to the Lord, can anybody tell me, where am I supposed to find that out? How am I supposed to find that out?
Read your Bible.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Read the Bible. I saw somebody else back there lifting up their Bible. That's where we find it. So we're supposed to find out what is acceptable to the Lord. Now, let me share something with you here. Okay? Again, I'm telling you things that some of you have heard a lot of times. I'm sharing this for those that maybe have not been here before, visiting. There are funner youth groups that you can go to, where you can play games and get snacks and play some more games and maybe hear a 10-minute Bible study and maybe a little bit of worship, play some more games. And that's, man, if that's your thing. But listen, what we're trying to do here is we are trying to establish and build up, strengthen your faith. And if Paul said, the Word of God right here says in verse 10 that we need to find out what is acceptable to the Lord, and we just heard that, well, where are we going to find that? Well, it's in the Bible. Then it seems like we should spend more time in the Bible, reading it, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. That's what this Bible is doing, is we're going to it and we go, oh, this is acceptable to the Lord. But then we also find out, oh, this is unacceptable to the Lord. Like some of those verses that I read earlier in Ephesians chapter 5, some of those things that he mentioned, about, the fornication and the the uncleanness and the covetousness, all of those different things, those are unacceptable to the Lord. I'm trying to find out what is acceptable to the Lord. And so as I'm reading my Bible, I'm going to find that out. So in here, just in case you didn't know, we are not perfect people. This is not a room full of perfect people. Now, we're trying to be perfect in the sense that, man, we're trying to be godly. We're trying to be more like God, and God is perfect, and that's what we're grasping for, reaching for. But at the same time, we understand, we're not going to be perfect, not on this side of heaven, but that's what we're reaching for. And that doesn't give us an excuse to just, throw caution to the wind and just live sinfully. No, we're trying to sin less and less, and we're not sinless, but we are trying to sin less and less and less. And I want to find out what is acceptable to the Lord. So if I'm walking in light, I need to find out what is acceptable to the Lord. And then once I find that out, then I want to commit myself to doing that and saying, okay, Lord, I see that this is what's acceptable to you. So this is what I want to do. This is how I want to live. So we're all in the process here. Welcome to the club. All in the process. Now, verse 11, and then he says this, and here's another thing, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. Now, what I did was, I called that forsake. I want to forsake the unfruitful works of darkness, or I want to forsake darkness. Remember, he told us earlier that we were darkness, right? Past tense. But now we're light. So if I'm no longer darkness, then man, I need to stop doing those things that are darkness. I need to give that up. I need to quit that life. I need to put that behind me. Sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes it's hard. It's summertime. Some of you are trying to cut some weight. Maybe just to have your hot girl summer, or maybe just because you're trying to make the team, or you're trying to get to your, maybe you're on the wrestling team, or you want to make it, whatever, and you're just trying to you're just trying to whatever, you're trying to cut weight. But man, it's hard to give up the snacks, isn't it? When you're trying to lose weight, oh man, what if I just have half a Twinkie instead of a whole one? But it's hard because you have half a Twinkie. You know what happens? It makes it easier to have the other half. You're like, I blew it, man. All right, well, I'll just have the other half now. I'll start tomorrow. Start over. It's hard. And so is that previous life that we were living, darkness. Sometimes it's hard, man, and it's hanging on, and you're trying to cut it loose and run away from it, and it keeps showing up. Be patient. Be patient with God as he works that out of your life. But you got to sit still and let him get it out. Don't run from him. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. And then here's another thing that we're supposed to do that is not very popular, but I got to share it with you because it's in our verse. But rather expose them. This is killing me right here. Let me just share something with you for a second. I love alliterations. I think they're godly. But there's an E right there. Sorry about that. I couldn't come up with a word that started with F to expose. Okay, so that's what you get. I'll be okay. Find out, forsake, and then again in verse 11, you want to expose. Look at this in verse 11. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. So I got to let that go. I got to stop. But rather expose them. Expose them. Wow. Okay. So I need to expose those things. In the Old Testament, I'm going to share some truth with you. In the Old Testament, a lot of people died. That is truth. Okay? And that's one of the big complaints that critics of the Bible have. Like, oh, the Old Testament's so bloody, and, God was always killing people, or people were killing people, or whatever. That is true. And it is true that God told his people, the Jews, he gave them the law and told them, hey, there were certain people that if there's a witch or if there's a false prophet, those are people that needed to be stoned to death. Like rocks, throw at them, kill them, eliminate them. That is true. Why did God do that? Here's where they get all mixed up. He did that because his people at the time, they were like a brand new baby, man, and he was trying to get them, trying to teach them how to walk. And so he told them, look, you got to be drastic with this stuff. You got to cut this out. Don't let it take root. Get it out. But then you notice there's a change when you go to the New Testament. You find that God's not commanding those things anymore. At least he's not telling, the church, the Christians, like, if somebody sins, you got to kill him. He doesn't do that. But what he does say is, rather expose them. When there is some unfruitful work of darkness, something bad, then what you need to do is you need to expose it. Now, this is a perfect setting for this verse. Because I know, I was going to say I'm no dummy. I guess I am. But I understand that I've got a room full of teens. And that sometimes teens hide things from adults. That's just a given. Come on. That's just something that happens. I don't like that. If there's something going on, something big enough, you need to tell me or tell one of the leaders. That's why we're here. One of the reasons that we're here. But now, let me just throw that back on you. I like this part. I'm just going to throw it back on you. If you know that there's drama stirring, if you know that, he doesn't like that guy or she doesn't like her, and, she said this about his boyfriend or her boyfriend, sorry, and, you got like, this, everything's getting all stirred up. But don't tell Pastor. Here comes Pastor Chris, don't say anything. Or here comes the leader, don't say anything. Listen, you're not going to tell us? Again, I don't like that. You should let us know because we want to try and squash all of that. But when it gets down to it, getting down to the nitty-gritty, you've got a responsibility. If you're claiming to be light and there's unfruitful works of darkness happening in this group, he tells you right there, it's clear, it's plain as day, but rather expose them. You need to expose them. That's your responsibility. In fact, I would go so far as to say, verse 11, you notice that my name's not in there? Did you notice that? Neither are the leaders. Zach's name's not in there. That means if there's some unfruitful work of darkness happening, it's your responsibility to expose it. To say to your friend or to say to your homie or to somebody else's homie, hey, that's sinful behavior. You got to stop. We love you. We'll help you, but you got to knock that off. You need to expose it. Now, by exposing it, let me tell you what I do not mean. I do not mean put them on blast on your social media. Hey, everybody, Joab did such and such, Just wanted to let you all know because the Bible says to expose the unfruitful works of darkness. That's not what we're talking about here, okay? Not what we're talking about. He's not on social media. He won't even see it, so it doesn't do any good. What it means is you need to go to that person and say, hey, that's sinful behavior. You got to stop. You got to knock that off. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to pray for you, but you got to stop. That's what he means there. Have no fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Let's finish it up because we got to get you guys to some small groups. Okay? Verse 12. For it is shameful. Why? Why do we need to expose it? For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. Even the things that they do in secret, man, it's a shame. We don't even want to, by speaking about it, meaning we don't want to dwell on it and, what were they doing? And, give me, tell it. Okay, yeah. No. Hey, spill the tea. Come on, man. I got to know. I mean, just so I can pray for them. But just, what they do. Oh, she did what? Nah. You go to the person. You tell them, hey, this is what I see. You got to knock it off. Verse 13. But all things that are exposed are made manifest. They're made known by the light. So if we're light, we're going to expose those things. For whatever makes manifest, whatever makes it known is light. Verse 14, this is where we finish. Therefore, he says, who says? Jesus says, awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. In other words, listen, if you're involved in those unfruitful works of darkness, then you're asleep. Spiritually, you're asleep. And you need to wake up from the dead, arise from the dead. Christ is going to give you light. I'm going to skip over something real quickly here. Just pretend you didn't see that. Matthew 13, verse 43. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. What an incredible verse. I've read through Matthew 13 before. Why don't I remember this? Look what he's saying. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. So if we are considered the righteous, then that's what we are going to be doing. Although I think he might be not only talking about now, but talking about even in the kingdom to come. Let me show you a couple things as we finish, a couple of quotes. Look what C.S. Lewis said in his book, The Weight of Glory. He said, nature is mortal. This blew my mind. Nature is mortal. We shall outlive her. When all the suns and nebulae have passed away, each one of you will still be alive because we're eternal. Nature is only the image, the symbol. We are summoned to pass in through nature beyond her to the splendor. In other words, we're in the natural body right now. We're passing through this world, through the natural world, and we're going into splendor, into heaven, which she fitfully reflects. Here's what a Bible teacher, I didn't put up there, sorry. Here's what a Bible teacher, R. Kent Hughes, said. As Christians, there is a glory awaiting us that involves, in some mysterious way, shining. Somehow, we are going to enter into the fame and approval of God, and we will be glorious beings far beyond description. That's our future. That's what God is making us into. What an incredible thought. That I'm not just stuck, in my sin and my failures and, just trying to figure it all out on my own. But rather, God is working in me, changing me. I'm light in the Lord, and he's changing me. That's positionally, and he's changing me into that. That's my identity. What an incredible thought. Man, that I changed from darkness to light, not on my own, but because of my faith in Jesus. Father, thank you so much for this evening.